Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 live stream for the Olympic Games. Gonna break down what to expect from the course and how to attack all of your DFS and prop exposure to go out there and have yourself a moving day. But first off, just want to say welcome to the live stream. Whether you're down here live and early, an overachiever, as some may say, welcome on in, or if you're watching this on replay as well. The one thing I'll ask as you guys are filing on in is to go out there and smash that like button for me. We're going to give you all the info, put any questions that you've got down there in chat, and I'm super stoked to get after it. I guess first off, today ended up being a really solid showdown day where we had multiple takedowns in the community. I had a few close calls myself, and yeah, the plays from yesterday's live stream were definitely a hit. So hopefully we can build on that. Props was about break even, so not quite as solid a day over there, but still super excited to talk about our Saturday exposure and to get on after it. So we got a Bruzy down there with the Tommy Lad comment. Putter is certainly heating up. What's going on, man? We got Nick down there as well, who, by the way, took down the big GPP today. So nice little 10K takedown out there for Nick, and congrats, and let's run it back. Like you said, what's going on, Michael? Let's go for the gold. Let's do that both for the US out there with the gold medal and in our pockets with a little change. Let's get after it. We got Travis down there as well. Long time no see. Definitely hard to get you in the night streams, but love to have you here, man. What's going on, Ross? Tom Kim also moving up. I'm rooting for him out there to get a medal so he can get his military service exempted. That'd be pretty cool for him. So we got a few of you down there. We're going to talk about your questions here in a little bit, but let's get this thing rocking. We're going to start it off with our presenting sponsor of the live stream, which of course are our friends over there at the Ship It Nation. For all your needs with DFS, not just with golf, just make sure to check them out for all of that content. They've got you covered with projections, ownership, a lot of process-based tips over there, and they have dedicated content creators for all of the sports that you see listed. So NFL's coming around soon. We've also got college football on the radar, but for your PGA stuff, NBA, hockey, when that comes around, they've got you covered for pretty much every single sport you can think of. So make sure to check them out if you guys haven't already, and use code Luke10 when you're signing up, and you will get a 10% discount off any membership. So obviously helps support the channel and gives you a little discount to some of the best DFS content out there. In terms of an all-encompassing site, you're not going to find any better out there. They don't price gouge it. You get a lot of the process stuff on top of the tools and content that you'll see on other sites, and a really cool community as well. So make sure to check them out if you guys haven't already. And again, great sponsor, and love to have them as a part of the show here. But let's talk about this golf course for today, which today played pretty flat. If you take a look at the scoring average between the first half and second half, it was only a 0.14 shot difference, which is to be expected when you just have a 60-man field and there's not going to be a defined wave out there between AM and PM. Day one, it was a little bit larger, right? That 0.9 shot difference that we mentioned, but the winds were drastically different between the AM and the PM. Today, they were pretty constant. In fact, if we take a look at the observed wind out there, see, in the morning, it was like 7-8 miles an hour, around like 10, maybe 12. And then in the PM, when guys were finishing up, it maybe got a little spicier. Again, the 0.14 shot difference. However, it was only like 8-9 miles an hour. So didn't make a huge difference out there. And I guess just a spoiler alert out there with the weather, it looks pretty much the same. I mean, you're talking next to no wind the entire day. It might get a little gustier in the afternoon, but that happened today and was only about a 0.14 shot difference. So I'm not playing a ton of weather out there for Saturday. And I thought maybe the PM guys would get a slightly harder set of conditions. But if we circle back to the ceiling performances, it really didn't matter, right? Dietrich, a play that we talked up. Fleetwood was a later starter that went off. But a lot of these guys like Jaeger, Fitzpatrick that I played, I think even a CT Pan might have been a PM guy, but a vast majority of these players that went off were players that had at least a first half tee time. So the weather edge ended up working out for us, even though it was a small little difference, but I'm not counting on that out there for moving day. So we'll talk about what I'm doing over here for Showdown here in a second, but a lot of it isn't going to be weather based, which sometimes it can be great to go out there and incorporate some weather, but I don't think it's necessarily the best slate for it. So let me bring up my projections here, and we'll start to talk some DFS. All right, where were we at? So We have a question about Victor. We'll talk about him. I actually like him for tomorrow, so I don't think he's broken, but I'll give you my take on him here in a second. Let's get back to some of the questions. So we had a question about Clark in Minwoo. So I'll tell you right now that Clark is going to be a player that I talk about. So I'm going to save my comments for him just like I am with Victor Hovland, but definitely in play, I'll say. And then Minwoo, I think that you had the ceiling round today. It almost feels like maybe you're a round late there, but not the worst play. Are there participation trophies for those that finish 4th through 60th? No. And honestly, that's the crazy thing about this week is there's little to no motivation other than official world golf ranking points. So for the PGA guys, they're probably not going to care all that much. But a little hidden narrative to maybe consider is that the live guys really care about those OWGR points. So even if they're further back, so like an Adrian Meronk, for example, that hasn't had the best week, he's going to want to get as many of those points as possible to try and get into a potential major, that sort of thing. So yeah, there's no participation points. There's no money that's going the way of any player. However, there's OWGR points, and for certain players, I think that matters. For a lot of them, it probably doesn't, right? Like your established PGA Tour pro, like a Griot, right? A few guys that are towards the bottom end of the board probably couldn't care less, but a few of them definitely can. What's going on, 3B? Said, keep killing it, Luke. Of course. Welcome on in, my man. And what part of Florida am I from? I'm from South Florida, Delray Beach area, near Boca Raton. So I don't want to give you the exact area of there, but that area down here in South Florida. So your best state in the union, completely agree with that. And give this man a like and subscribe. Appreciate the kind words, man. And yeah, love Florida. It's the best state. And you just know, you got to be down here to know why it's the best, but it is. You got Victor question. We'll talk about him. Florida homies, keep an eye on that storm. See, that's the thing about us Florida homies, man. We don't flinch at a storm like that. In fact, some of us celebrate because we get work off in some of our responsibilities. I won't be, right? It doesn't impact my job out there with covering the PGA Tour. But, you know, my mom, for example, some of my coworkers, I shouldn't say coworkers, friends that work out places are people that are going to be pretty happy about it. So, yeah, we're built different down here. We see a hurricane and we get excited. As long as it's not like a Cat 5, we'll be good down here. Vic sounds like a broken man. We'll talk about it. And yeah, Nick had a nice takedown. It was pretty sick. Is Rombo back? I think so. I've been talking about it for a while, and I'm not sure he was ever gone. If you take a look at the live golf stuff, Hef, he's been really solid for quite some time, right? It's not like he's, 10th over there on the live tour. He's the number 2 player on that tour. So I wouldn't say he's back. I would say maybe for people that haven't been watching, he's back. But yeah, definitely at the height of his powers. You had Dietrich, but no Jaeger. Thanks for the great showdown. Of course, Dietrich was the move. Hey, I tried to tell you yesterday, right? What's going on, Joe? What's going on, Brian? He said, doing well and kicking the nuts. Yeah, same here. I'm not winning the GPPs right now, but I'm pretty close to the top. So right where I want to be. Great call on Dietrich. Appreciate that. Well done, Sheriff. Pan and Perez both birdied 18, pushed you over the top. Yeah, I remember you sent me a DM after that, right? You told me you had like a 99.6% chance of winning. I was essentially sweating your lineups more than mine because I was passed up about 5 minutes before that. So I was at the top of GVPs today. I had my short time over there at the top, but hey, I'm glad that people from the community won, right? We had a few Ship It Nation guys I saw that did well, a few guys on my Discord and Patreon page that shared some of their stuff too. And yeah, no takedown here, but if it's going to be anyone that's taking stuff down, I'd rather it be you guys, right? They're enjoying the content, going out there, and especially the people that add to it, right? And add their own discussion with questions. Like, you like to see that, right? Not the average Joe Schmo out there. So good stuff. The points will be a huge strategy for the weekend. Yes, the live guys in particular, I think might be guys to keep an eye on. Missed the stream yesterday, but you're not missing it today. Hey, smart man, getting in here. Welcome on in, my man. We got Bart down there says, do we think Mito will care about the points? We'll talk. Actually, I don't think Mito's a guy that I'm talking about, but I'm playing him. So I hope so. I hope he cares. Round 2 was horrible, right? Round 1 was pretty solid for Mito. A little bit of a luck sack, I'd say, with the putter. Round 2 was just bleeding everywhere. So for his sake, I hope so, but we'll have to see, right? It's hard to say beforehand. You never know these guys' motivations. They might completely check out, or they might even be somebody that has no one, nothing to play for and still care. Like it's so dependent each player. So I don't know if I want to speculate too much. Great content as always. What are my thoughts on Norn and Fox? So Nor and Fox, both going to be, I'd say, relatively low owned, still over 10% ownership on Norn. So if you're looking to get a little different, I think he can accomplish that. Shots gained metrics are a little bit hairy. So it is not the worst play. It's not like he's bleeding strokes in both ball striking categories, but he's just not doing anything special there either. So I'd say Norn's like a 5 out of 10, right? He's about as average a play as humanly possible. If you need to get different, you have a hunch that he's going to go out there and have a day, then he's usable in spots, right? Large field GPPs where you're trying to get different, or where you want to get to an Alex Norn. Ryan Fox, I think, has a little bit more upside. Ryan Fox is a player that I'm using out there for my round 3 showdown lineups. Not somebody we're going to talk about here on stream, but I like the upside, right? Round 1, he showed us what he was capable of. Ball striking tee to green play round 1 was what carried him, and that's what you'd like to see. Round 2 was a stinker round, right? So there are a few guys that I'm using for round 3 showdown that had stinker rounds, and that you're going to have to look the blind eye for what they did out there in round 2. But that's also why we played D-Tree, right? For round 2 showdowns, we said, hey, I don't care about round 1. Just 18-hole sample size. Cut these guys a little slack, play a few guys that are uncomfortable for your round 2 lineups, and it worked out quite well in a few cases, right? Round 3 showdown, it's the same thing, right? If round 2's performance is what's holding you back from playing anybody, I would give you some pushback there. I'd tell you to, again, cut the player a little bit of slack, especially if round 1 they did some solid stuff. Now, if they luck stacked it round 1, if it was around the green all putting, now maybe you don't want to tail that. But if round 1 was a solid ball striking round, then maybe use that as a positive, correct? You know, these guys are going to be lower owned. And I'll just mention the showdown strategy now, right? Let's just talk about this. We'll circle back on questions here in a little bit. But our general strategy out here for round 3 showdown is as it always is over here on the channel. It's play the game theory edge and know that the top of the leaderboard is going to have way higher ownership than they should. The way that works out here on round 3 showdown is we don't have placement points, right? If you're new to PGA DFS, maybe new to just playing DFS in general, you know, round 3 showdown is way different than round 4 showdown. You know, rounds 1, 2, and 3, we don't have placement in play whatsoever. And it's all about your 18-hole score, right? Your birdies, your streaks, you know, bogey-free rounds. If you're able to accomplish that, it doesn't matter where you finish on the leaderboard. You could be plus 30 when the day starts, and you have the same exact chance to go out there and score as the guy out there in first place. The people playing round 3 showdown, though, do not play it like that, right? A lot of times they just put all of their ownership on the guys that are playing well. And just as I said that you have to give a little bit of slack to the guys that haven't played well over the first few days, especially if it's just like a 1-round sample size, you also can't give too much credit to the guys that have played well. This is an extremely variant sport. There's a lot of chaos and variance that we have here with PGA DFS. And knowing that is a key to go out there and build your lineups. Because if you know that there's going to be variance, that it's hard to go out there and find the right plays, well, if they're going to be guys that are way higher owned than everyone else, then they're easy fades, right? Just based on that alone. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to fade every player that's getting ownership, but it does mean that in general, taking the lower owned options that in reality have about the same sort of hit rate as their peers is going to be the plus EV move. And if you don't know why that's the case, I'll give you like the 30-second rundown. When you're playing lower owned players, you are sharing them with less of the field, right? So when that player hits, you're going to have a better chance to move up the leaderboards. So for example, if somebody that's 30% goes off, well, if you're in the large field GPP, that might be 10,000 other people that have that player. So even if you get that right, you're still going to be playing against 10,000 other people with your other 5 spots. Now, you still have plenty of opportunity with your other 5 spots to get different, but take that same idea, right, and translate it to your entire lineup of 6 players. If you're taking higher owned players in, 4, maybe even 5 spots, well, then you're going to run into problems because even when your guys are hitting, you're only knocking off so many lineups at a time out there in the GPP. So when you're playing those large field contests, especially for showdown, like you have for round 2 and then round 3 out here for Saturday, you want to take the lower owned options in general. Now, that doesn't mean only play the low owned players. You can still have your Xander from today, right? Your higher owned guy that goes out there and smashes, but you shouldn't make a habit of it out there in your lineup. So my strategy out here for round 3 is going to be to give a little bit of slack to players, right? It's going to be to take some early to mid starters. Now, there are some later guys that I'm taking a shot on. Rory is going to be a prime example. We'll talk about Aberg here in a minute, right? Guys that are still later guys that I'm getting to. However, a lot of the other guys in my poll down low 6-7K range especially, but even some pivots up there in the 9 and 10K range are players that haven't had their best stuff over the first 2 days, right? Haven't had their fastball. And again, I'm willing to look the blind eye a little bit, right? I'm willing to look at long-term upside. I'm not telling you to go out there and play these slapdicks that you never heard of, like that guy from India at the bottom, like the guys that you literally don't even know existed before this week, like Joel Gerbach. I honestly didn't know until this event. I've seen Kwang Mai in a few live events. He's finished last like almost every time he's played. Like Tapio Pulkkinen, he's not necessarily like an everyday sort of name out there on the DP World Tour. These sort of guys, you should probably just leave out of lineups. What I'm more so talking about, and we'll talk about Clark later, right? Could be that kind of option. Nick Taylor could be that kind of player. Legit tour players that, again, maybe haven't had their fastball that can hopefully get it back on track. And I'm going to point out a few. We're going to talk about why I think they have a chance to turn it around. It's not for no reason, right? There's shots gained metrics. There are, one reason or another that I think these guys can turn it around, but those are the pivots that you should be looking at. So keep that in mind. That's the general strategy. And let's talk through a few players now. So first guy I want to mention is Rory McIlroy, who, believe it or not, is actually one of the lower-owned players up here towards the top end of the board. I've got him at about 16.8% projected ownership. And at -5, it's not like he's playing poorly to this point, but has been mixing in a lot more bogeys than we'd like. Still plenty of birdie production, has actually posted an eagle or two, a lot of really good long iron shots out here over the first few days. And at $10,200, it's not even just the play. It's not even just his birdie or better upside, but it's also the price tag here. Now, Rory was about 11 grand heading into main slate this week. It is now only $10,200. Scotty's 12 grand. A Xander, who's playing lights out golf, is $11,400 himself. And at these elevated price tags, right? 11, 12K for Showdown. They really have got to go out there and score crazy low to go out there and be worth it. Because if somebody like a Rahm, a Morikawa, a McIlroy, like we're talking about with the play here, if any of these guys go out there and have just as good a round or maybe even a stroke worse than one of those top two guys, they might be the optimal play just based on salary, because going up here to an 11, 12K golfer is going to cost you the salary down low. So part of the reason I love Rory here is that he's only $10,200. And because of how soft the Showdown pricing can be, you can make a really solid lineup starting at $10,200. So the fact that he's lower owned than a Xander Scotty, he's also lower owned than I have here with a John Rahm, higher owned than guys like a Morikawa or Neiman. But at this kind of price tag, I think he should be the highest owned player out there on the slate, right? He's like, in my opinion, one of the biggest misprices towards the top end of the board. The fact that he's only $400 more than Morikawa, $600 more than Joaquin Neiman is, in my opinion, a huge mistake. So I'm going to try and take advantage of that. I think an inefficient price tag, and obviously it's Rory McIlroy, right? One of the best, if not the best players when it comes to going out there and going super low. And now that he's -5, he's not really in contention to win a medal at this point. I think the mental factor is a positive out there for Rory McIlroy. If he were -8, -9, close up there to the pedestal and whatnot, going out there and getting a medal, I would be a little bit more worried about him. Right? He's a little bit of a nutcase. We've seen that out there in majors. We've seen him crumble out there when he has a lead. On the flip side, when he's disengaged, think of Sunday at the Masters a few years ago. Think of just all these random backdoor top 10, top 15s that he posts. When he's not at the top of the board is seemingly when he plays his best golf. So I know that about Rory. That's part of the reason that I want to take him out here for tomorrow, and why I felt he was worth pointing out over here on the live stream. He's got a relatively low ownership. By the way, the ball striking metrics for Rory have been solid. He's gained both off the tee and on approach over the first few rounds. In fact, I believe it's like a stroke and a half out there with his ball striking per round. It's just the putter and around the green. And on these courses, fescue grass, it's bent POA this week, so it's not true fescue, but these European style greens, he can fill it up with the flat stick. You've seen it on some of his DP World Tour wins, Rolex Cup victories over there on that side of the pond. I could see the putter turning. And if it does, Rory's going to have a solid day. So that's why I'm using him out there in my lineups. Ludwig Gobert is a similar sort of player. Honestly, same kind of ownership, where I've got him at about 15.5%. And a lot of that is based on his price tag. If he were, $9,800, $9,900 like he was for main slate, he wouldn't be close to 15.5%. He'd be probably 9-10% owned because he's not playing as well as some of the other top tier options. But just like Rory, it's not playing poorly over there at -4. And the ball striking stats for Ludwig have been really solid to this point of the week. He's gaining off the tee, he's gaining on approach, and just hasn't had it over there with the 2 short game categories. So for somebody like that can go out there, maybe get some putting regression going, he's relatively, I don't want to say low owned, but he's about averagely owned over here in this range, and definitely lower owned than guys like a Fleetwood, Matsuyama, and Tom Kim over here at $9,800. So sorry, $8,900. So if you're going to give me slightly lower ownership on a guy that I think is the longer term better player, then I'll take them all day at about 15.5%. So you're really kind of getting a little bit of everything out here with these top 2 plays. You're getting a price inefficiency, you're getting relatively low ownership, also getting some solid shots gained metrics, which is why these 2 players in particular are probably going to be my highest leveraged plays on the slate. Now, they might not actually be my highest ownership out there in terms of exposure, but in terms of leverage, because they're lower owned than some of the other top tier options, there's a very good chance that I'm, again, the most leveraged on those sort of players. So I think they're solid plays and spots where you can try and get a little different up top. Next up, we got Viktor Hovland, who I know we had a question about, so I wanted to save my comments so we could talk about him here, but he's +3, he's $8,700. He played horrible golf over there on Friday. He can never go out there, right, and do it out there for moving day, or as my buddy DGen75 would say, or he could, right, go out there and have himself a day. It's Viktor Hovland's, for goodness sake. This is the guy who won the FedEx Cup. Must we forget that this guy is an absolute certified stud in that 2-3 months ago, he was quote unquote broken, and then all of a sudden, right, shook it off, got back to Joe Mayo, and ended up playing well. This guy is just sporadic. He's a little bit bipolar when it comes to his golf game, and you kind of got to know that with Hovland. So if he's going to be sub 10% owned, like I have him, you can see only 8.4% ownership right there. Why not take a shot on him? He's obviously an uncomfortable play, more of a large field GPP play than anything, where you're trying to get some differentiation, trying to get a little bit cute over there in the 8K range. But when we compare the ownership numbers, it's ridiculous. I mean, Corey Connors, who actually thinks a decent play out there for round 3, is almost double the ownership. Somebody like Tom Kim is over double the ownership of somebody like a Viktor Hovland. Heck, even somebody like Dietrich is almost twice the ownership as Viktor, which just doesn't make sense. There's no placement points in play. I would just urge you guys to go out there and try and forgive and forget a little bit with these players and try and take his chance on a guy that's lower owned. Now, it doesn't have to be Hovland, right? But what I'm trying to point out here and help you guys incorporate into your own process are there just high pedigree players, guys with a lot of upside that you might want to take a chance on out there in Showdown, right? Rounds 1 and 2, even if it was a horrible 2 rounds out there for any given player, remind yourself, it's only 36 holes. And in the case of Hovland, holes 1 through 18 really weren't all that shabby. It was mostly just holes 19 through 36 that you saw out there today. So I'll forgive that, just like we did with Thomas Dietrich in round 1, and hopefully he can get it going. Let's catch up on chat, and then we'll talk about a few other plays on here. The 18th hole was definitely taking names, that's for sure. Hey, brother, Average Joe Schmo here, but need your Patreon information. It's down there in the description of the video. So on there, you can join it. It's $15 a month for the DFS tier. So depending if you're a DFS guy or a prop guy, there's something out there for you. So make sure to check it out and let me know if you have any questions. So many BFRs will end on 18. Yeah, you can't count your chickens before they hatch. That's for damn sure. Those bums that we got off to watch tee off the first tee. Yeah, they did it again, James. They went out there. They made us watch all these guys teeing off like Kong Wat Mai. They had Tapio on the first tee again. They got to stop about it. To your point about ownership, your build today that won was 26.87, 18%, and then a bunch of low-owned guys. Exactly, right? It was 2 guys that you splurged on with the ownership, and then 3 guys that we'd call true pivots that are sub 10%. Even Manacera, like 18.6% was getting some ownership, but you're 100% right about that, right? You weren't going out there and just playing all the chalk. You can still take a piece or two, like what you did there with John Rahm, but don't go crazy about it. Sweet, we got a prize picks board to work with. That is sweet. You're scared of Rory. You feel like 2 or 3 bad holes will just mail it in. Yeah, he's got a low floor, right? So if you're playing somebody like that, just know that they could mail it in, right? This is a low incentive event. They're not playing for FedEx Cup points. They're not playing to move on to the next stage of the playoffs like they will be in a few weeks. Rounds 3 and 4 of those events in the playoffs, I'm not worried about it, right? They're going to be trying to crawl and scratch for every single point that they can get. This week, I think that's a fair criticism. So if you've got to find a reason to fade a guy, that's totally fair to go out there and do. So I'm not going to worry about it, though. As I said, I'm a large field GBP player, so I don't worry about a floor, right? If you're worried about that, maybe you're entering like a single entry, higher dollar contest. I get having that apprehension. But if you're entering the big $20, the big $5 GBP, you shouldn't really have concerns about that. Plenty of your guys aren't going to get there. And all you're worried about in those large field GBPs is ceiling, right? You're not looking to min cash there. You don't really give a shit, right, about winning $50 out there on your slip back. Like, that's not going to make a difference, especially if you're like 150 maxing, that kind of build. It's all about that top end upside. So, yeah, cash lineups, single entries, that kind of thing. I'd worry about that narrative a bit, but large field GPPs, not so much. Price Picks board is up. Cool. Beatdown coming on Underdog. There we go. Eric calling them bitches like they are. I love it. What's going on, Brian? Both days, you guys have shit the bed on 16 and 18. Those are two tough holes out. They got me on 16 day one. So I definitely feel you on that, Brian. 18, though, that's going to be a recurring nightmare this week. 18 is... Like I said, it just takes names. All right, let's talk about a few more players on here. So we mentioned Hovland. Next up, we got Wyndham Clark at $7,600. We had a question about him before, and again, I wanted to hold my comments till we got here because I think he's well within play out there for tomorrow. So the +1 score is going to keep a lot of casuals off of him, but anyone with a pulse that watched Wyndham Clark today or was able to follow some of his shot trails or even just the scorecard or shots gained metrics will know that Wyndham Clark looked a whole lot better out there for today. He gained strokes off the tee, gained a bunch of strokes out there on approach. In fact, out there in both categories was top 15 in both. A player that went out there, lost strokes putting to the field, and still had one of the better showdown days of the day. And I mentioned it yesterday, right? I said Wyndham Clark probably not completely lost. Now, I didn't play him out there for round 2, but the reason I'll play him out there for moving day is the ball striking improved, but you know what didn't? The putter. He did not make anything out there for his round 2. So if he can get back to just draining those 20, 30 footers like he's used to doing, again, one of the best putters out there on the PGA Tour, he could go out there and have that nuclear type of round. So obviously round 2 was the bounce back that a lot of people were hoping for with Win DC. And as a Team USA fan, right, he's not going to win or anything like that, but he does seem like the sort of player that isn't going to mail it in. I mean, you've seen him have just these nuclear rounds before, and who knows, maybe he does shoot like -8, -9 tomorrow. If he does, he's still probably not going to medal, but he at least has a chance to do so if he goes out there and does that. So I think you're going to see him grind. Again, a low floor player, a guy that could, have a few bad holes and then go out there and mail it in. But I don't worry about that as a large field GPP player, right? Again, I accept low floors as long as those players truly have a high ceiling. And I think with Rory, that's especially evident. And then same thing here with Wyndham Clark. And the shots gained metrics and all the players have been there. It's just been the short game, which is kind of surprising out there for Rory and Wyndham Clark, that has held them back. So hopefully they can plug that hole and keep it going. Next up, we got Nick Taylor, who is the second to last player I want to point out here, and a true leverage piece, right? He's only 7% projected owned, should be sub 10%. And though he's +1, has not had his best stuff by any means, he's gaining strokes on approach. Off the tee, a very accurate player. This is more of a precision golf course than anything. So I think long-term course fit is decent for Nick Taylor. Approach stats are there over the first few days. And again, just has to get that short game going. So, a player that maybe doesn't have a ton of experience with links golf. It's not a true links style golf course this week, but the greens, maybe that's why he's getting a little bit confused. Hopefully he can figure out that puzzle because the shots gained metrics have been there. He's going to be sub 10% owned. And at $6,900, he's also probably cheaper than he should be for this week as well. So a player that I'm looking to just based on the shots gained metrics, and should give you an idea of the kind of players I'm looking for down low, right? As I mentioned, you should have a rhyme or reason for getting to all of your plays. And it shouldn't just be trying to pick names out of a hat. You're going to get to Nick Taylor, right? It's the shots gained metrics, the approach play that you probably like about that sort of play. Just find something to latch onto down here in the 6K range. And if you look at their shots gained metrics, if you look at their course history, those sort of things, and you can't find a reason to go out there and get to somebody, well, maybe you shouldn't be using them. out there in your showdown lineups. The only exception to that, and I guess Mito would be an example of like that for me, would be pure upside. You say, you know what? He did it round 1. Maybe he can figure it out and do it for round 3. And most of those guys in my player pool are just extremely low owned. And a great example of this that I have on here is Nicholas Echeverria at $6,200. And that is just a nasty name to say. You feel guilty. You feel disgusting even saying it over here as a play, but there's a reason to get there. He's a very accurate driver of the golf ball when he's playing his best stuff. And to the stage of the week, his off-the-tee play has been excellent over the first few days, and his approach play has been his second best category. As you guessed, just like Nick Taylor, it has been all about the short game. And what you like about Echeverria is he's usually out of play out there for main slate. He's just not the kind of guy that can keep it together for 4 rounds. Happened to do it at an alternate event last year. That's how he got his first tour win. But for showdown purposes, we've seen this guy have first round leader sort of scares. He's gone out there, have nuke performances out there for showdown. He's the kind of guy, when you get him right, kind of like a Peter Malnati, is capable of breaking the slate. So, it's just a pure upside thing. He's only 2.5% owned, and I'm using him in like 7% of my builds. So it's not like I'm going crazy on there on this sort of play, but the point of me pointing out in Echeverria is to show you what I'm looking for in players. Again, it's not just randomly trying to pull names out of the hat. It's trying to find something to hunker down on. And in the case of Nico, it's decent ball striking. It's not great, I have to say, right? That's why he's +1 to this stage of the week, but a good course fit out there with his off-the-tee accuracy as well. So the kind of players that you could look to for a little bit of exposure and perhaps use that same thought process for the rest of your player pool. Let's catch up on questions now, figure out what we're doing, and then we're going to do some prop stuff afterwards. So if you're just joining us, smash the like button if you haven't already, and throw any questions that you have down in chat. You thought the Grillo bounced back. You thought that he was going to. Only guy in your kicking the nuts that's holding it back. Well, best of luck to you, Brian. I hope that you have a solid week. Okay, you sold me on Rory, so be prepared for the bitching in my DMs. Oh, I'm all for it, Nick. And hopefully he's -6 for us, so we don't have to worry about that. Nico is insane, either -7 or +4. That's my sort of guy right there. The Jordan Spieth syndrome, right? Either goes out there, nukes, or gets nuked himself. I'm all for that. Any guidance for a single entry? So let me get to that in a minute, Gwen. We're actually going to get to a line of construction segment here in a minute, and I'll touch on that in full detail there. Jay Miz says no round score posted for Aberg. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. They can't post to everyone, right? So I think that's pretty common. You see that on the boards for like Underdog and Prize Picks too, right? They can only post like 10, maybe 12 guys out there for any given slate. So it kind of depends. All right, let's talk some line of construction stuff, because I do want to talk about the single entry concept out there for Gwen, but I also want to get into some other stuff out there for GPPs. Alrighty, so hopefully you can see Draftkings. Hopefully, okay, looks like it's working here. So what we want to do is talk about our thought process out there for the large field GPP. So we're going to start with like the big $20 or big $5 right now. And then afterwards, Gwen, I'm going to show you how the thought process will change if we're entering like a single entry, that kind of build. So in the large field GPP, as I've already alluded to multiple times throughout the video, I don't give a shit if the guy sucks tomorrow, right? And I guess that's what separates me from other players is I know my outcome and desired outcome out there in GPPs, right? If somebody's not a ceiling performance, that's essentially the same thing as them shooting -3 tomorrow, right? If they shoot +5, they shoot -3. I know you're going to have a better chance at min cashing, but in terms of your ROI long-term, that has little to no impact. Sure, having more min caches long-term is going to be a good thing, but if that's what you're worried about, and if that's what's changing your decision-making process, well, that's where you're doing things wrong. Because in the large field GPP out there this week, you got to beat like 10,000 other entries. You've got to beat even 4,000, 5,000 other people. And it takes a really good lineup to go out there and do so. So when I'm building for these, I'm looking for guys that can go nuclear, because if I can take 4 guys in the same lineup that go nuclear, other 2 guys, even if they don't score that well, just have decent performances, I'm going to have a good chance to take down that GPP. So up top, that's why I do like Rory as a first man in. And even as a second man in, maybe I don't go with Aubert, but I get different, right? And I throw in a Victor Hovland. My third man in here, maybe I'm throwing in a Sepp Straka that isn't all that highly owned. One thing I'll say about Sepp is his approach stats have been excellent over the first few days. So another potential sleeper play out there for tomorrow. We still have $7,500 remaining, and All three plays, none of them are crazy. I mean, it's Rory, Hovland, Straka, right? All guys that have solid form and have had solid 2024s, but are all lower owned than their peers. And especially if we round this off with three other pivots, I mean, we're going to be extremely different to the field. So I'm going to throw in a Ryan Fox to this lineup. I'm going to throw in an Adrian Maronk at $7,400. And you could take your pick of the mill. Hell, you could even take a chalky Guido Migliozzi if you wanted to at $7,500. And this lineup would be just fine out there for the large field GPP. And I guess this kind of build just encapsulates, right, my theory out there for tomorrow. I don't have any chalk in this lineup, right? I'm getting extremely contrarian with my exposure. You don't have to be as contrarian as me, right? I just choose to be a little bit more balls to the wall about it. Again, especially because I'm just trying to take down first place out there in these GPPs. This is the kind of lineup that I'm going to be getting to a lot out there for tomorrow. It's pivots at 5, maybe even all 6 spots, and guys that are just high talent players. I mean, Maronk, solid player on the DP World Tour before he went to Live Golf, hasn't had a great start to this week, but he's the quintessential like Ori could sort of player. Ryan Fox, we mentioned his round 1 performance, right? Maybe he gets back to some of that. On the ball striking stats with these top 3 players, there's just there's risk involved with a large field GPP lineup, but at least you're building for the proper outcome, right? We're not going out there and going, you know what? I'm trying to bin cash out there for round 3. You're going out there and you're saying, you know what? If my guys go off, now, a lot of the field aren't going to have these players, right? My product ownership is going to be way lower than the threshold for a duplicate. That's what you're looking for out there for round 3 showdown, at least if you're playing in the large field GPPs. If you're playing in a single entry, that's where you can kind of scale it back a little bit. If you want to take more chalk towards the top end of the board, well, you can afford to do so. So maybe you want to start with the Scheffler Schauffele. My personal favorite, if you're going to go chalkier, would be somebody like Jon Rahm because he's cheaper, right? He's not 11, 12 grand like you have with those top 2. So kind of like Rory, right? He's only $100 more expensive. He's playing well. He's cheaper than those top 2. And in terms of tee to green stats, Jon Rahm is top 10 in the field in both off the tee and approach play. So he's been very sustainable to this point, and I believe is the number 1 shots gained ball striking player out there over the first few days. So obviously bodes well for his future success. So if you're going to take a chalkier start, you could do it with a Jon Rahm, and you can get away with it a lot easier in a single entry. So we're going to take Jon Rahm there. I'm also going to throw in Aubert, who again is maybe slightly higher owned than what we're going to have here with Hovland. And then we're going to go down here and also throw in, let's go with, I guess it doesn't really matter. I'm not the biggest fan of this 8K range, if we're going to be honest. So I'm just going to throw in Ben Yan. He's actually a lower owned option over here in this lineup. But even if our 7K guys aren't that different, like Wyndham Clark, I had at about 10% ownership. Even if we went down here and mixed in a slightly chalkier option, like a Victor Perez, a Højgaard, and heck, even Migliozzi, you could throw into a single entry kind of build, you're going to get away with it because you're only trying to beat like 200 to maybe 1,000 other entries. Now, if it's like 1,000 entry single entry, you might want to get a little bit more different out there with this build. But if it's going to be sub 500 entries, your thought process is different, right? A top 5, a top 10 out there in a single entry means a whole lot more than you'd be going out there and, doing the same thing in a GPP, right? Sure, you'd get a big payout for a top 10 in GPP, but it's not going to be that big impact score that you're looking for your long-term ROI. So single entries, you care a lot more about those top 5, top 10s than what you would out there in GPPs. So you're willing to take on more ownership. You don't have to get as different to the field. And the byproduct of that is, I think, taking higher projected lineups. When I'm going out there and I'm building for single entries, a lot of times I'm a lot closer to the optimal than I am out there for my GPPs. Whereas my GPP lineups, right, when I'm entering the big $5, big $25, are normally way different, way different, both from lineup construction and the actual players than what you have for the optimal lineup. Out there in your optimizers, running projections for different sites. But I try and get different than that out there in the large field GPP. So that would be my advice out there in terms of lineup construction. And hopefully that helps out there for round 3. But go ahead, check on any questions down in chat, and then we're going to talk through props. So I know that we had a prize picks board, hopefully something posted over here on Underdog soon, so we can give you guys all the content there. But I appreciate you guys stopping by. If you were just here for DFS, I will touch on any of your last second questions, but that's going to be it for that side of things. Outside of answering those questions, our focus will be on the prop side. So if you're heading out of here, best of luck out there with your exposure, and let's go out there and get it for moving day. But let's catch up on chat and see what we're doing. So Scotty seems primed to move. I agree with that 100%. Shots gained metrics, T to green, he's been one of the best players in the field. The only thing for me in like Showdown that keeps me off of him is the price tag, right? He's like $12,400. And unless he's shooting like -7, -8, I think that there's a world where he shoots like -6 tomorrow and he isn't optimal, right? Because maybe it's a Rory, maybe it's a John Rahm, heck, a Joaquin Niemann, Morikawa, or any of those sort of players that goes out there and shoots like a -6. If they do so, right, you might have to have them as opposed to a Scotty Scheffler. So I agree with you. I hope so for the sake of my outright that he goes out there and moves up the board, but we'll have to see. If he can make a putt, as Brian said, he'll be moving up the board. When I get to props, you like Hideki in Matt Fitzpatrick for birdies. Okay. I'll have to take a look at those myself. Any thoughts on Griot? Okay. So, yeah, I think let's look at the shots gained metrics, because round 1, it felt like a little bit of fool's gold. That's why I avoided him for round 2. But let me see what I've got here. So we're over here on Data Golf. He in round 2, he lost across the board. But round 1, he did play really well, right? The tee to green play was there. I wasn't that sold that he was going to go out there and repeat that, but that does give us some optimism. So just like I'm going out there and playing Victor Hovland, Ryan Fox fits that same kind of narrative. I mean, let's look at Ryan Fox today, right? It's much of the same. Round 2 didn't have his best stuff, right? He lost across the board. Round 1, super good off the tee and gained across all 4 stat categories. Right? If I'm going to play Ryan Fox, you can definitely play Emiliano Grillo. So definitely a lower floor sort of option, but going to get you different, right? He's going to get you some leverage if you used him in lineups. And I think that there is a avenue for him having success. Worth noting that he's a ball striker, right? You like this kind of golf course, and he's relatively accurate off the tee. So I do think that there is a world where he goes out there and gets there. Talk to you soon, Luke. Thanks again. Of course, Nick. Best of luck out there for tomorrow. Thank you again, Luke. Thank you, CJ, or C Float. I don't know why I said CJ. I got ahead of myself, but thank you, man. Best of luck out there tomorrow. Aberg for an under 68.5 or a Neiman under 69.5. Ooh. So we'll have to take a look, Brandon. I haven't taken a look myself. But yeah, that Neiman prop looks especially nice. Zach says, you got in here late, any weather tomorrow. So yeah, I'll circle back on it for you. But if you want my full take on the weather, just go back to the beginning of the live stream. But the Spark Notes version is that I don't think it's going to have a massive effect. I think the morning guys are going to get slightly more receptive greens. You can see here that the winds do kick up a little bit as the day goes on. We could click through all the different models on here, but they're pretty much calling for the same thing. It's going to be about 6, maybe 7 miles an hour of sustained wind in the morning. And then the afternoon, it goes up like 3, maybe 4 miles an hour. And you can see on this model, it's even less of a difference between the morning and the afternoon. So if you're talking for Showdown, I don't see a huge edge between the AM and the PM, but I do think that, like, if you had to break a tie, like if you really couldn't decide between 2 players, one was super early, one was super late, you take the early guy. And it's not so much the weather that impacts that decision, but your early guys are by default going to be lower owned, right? People love playing the guys in form, the guys at the top of the leaderboard. Round 3 Showdown, the guys that are lower owned are typically the ones that are teeing off earlier. So, I guess there's a world where the wind does kick up late. I guess there's a world where that receptive greens do help a player. But I think the bigger impact, if you're just looking at weather, looking at tee times, is probably the ownership out there for Showdown. So that's what I'll say about that. Cheers, mate. Can't do any more than singles on props. So yeah, if you have any questions about that, let me know, Brian. But yeah, understand that. Nick is in a state that has props banned. So that's why he gets out of here. He always says he has so much FOMO if he watches it. So I understand him getting out of here. All right, let's talk some prop stuff, though. So if you have any DFS questions, I will still cover them. But in terms of the content here, we are going to shift our focus a little bit over here to the prop side. And for the sake of stats, from what we had in round 1, what we had out here for round 2, not much is going to change. The weather is almost identical to what we had over the first few days. And I think if anything, the bigger impact will be from the pin locations and tees. Tees haven't been really moved around all that much yet, but maybe they do make something drivable out there for moving day. Maybe we have some more bowl pin locations than what we had over the first 3 rounds. Usually round 3 is when they give these players a bone. So I wouldn't be that surprised if the birdie average went up a little bit. over there for moving day. Bogey average probably won't be impacted, right? If they go out there, they put bowl pin locations, they can be pretty tricky to go out there and get up and down on. So I don't think it's necessarily going to impact this bogey or worse average all that much, but the birdie average, I would imagine, goes up like 0.1, maybe even 0.2 per round. So worth noting that those pin locations are probably going to have an impact, but because we don't have the slopes to work with over there on shot tracker and whatnot, shot link, it's going to be really hard to tell, even with the pin sheet, what these players are facing. I've never played like Golf National. If you're affiliated with the club and you'd like me to play, I would love to head over there to France and play. But yeah, unfortunately, without shot tracker, without the mapping of the greens handy, it's pretty tough to tell what we're going to get out there for tomorrow. But speaking in generalizations, right, just using the historical setup of these golf courses, typically moving day is where they give the players a little bit of a bone, as I said. So with that being said, let's go ahead and check in on the props. And I don't think that Underdog has a board posted yet, which is a little disappointing, but luckily Prize Picks has us covered. So let's get over to that. I want to bring up some of the averages, some of the sportsbook stuff, and we'll get this thing rocking. So bear with me while I bring up these different sportsbooks, and we'll get this thing going. Oh, wrong site. Not trying to bring up my golf database. I'm trying to bring up FanDuel. Come on, man. All right, there we go. All right, let me share my screen and we'll get this thing going. So there's round score. Do we have anything on Draftkings? Doesn't look like it. All right, let's bring it up on Caesars then, which I know for a fact is going to have lines. They're always first to market here. And then FanDuel will have as well. And I should probably stop ripping my vape on live stream or else I'm going to be coughing into the mic. All right, let's see what we're doing here. So that Neiman prop that somebody mentioned before, I think could make a bit of sense here. And it surprises me that they have them. Ugh. One second, guys. Like I said, I shouldn't be hitting my vape on live stream, but this is what I get for doing that. So Victor's at that number and he's minus 150. Let me see where they have Wacko. So I don't see him on FanDuel unless I skipped him before, which is possible. Maybe he's on the board over here on Caesars. So let's see. Doesn't look like they have him over here on Caesars either. So is that a Prize Picks line that you were mentioning? If so, there's a very good chance I'm going to play it, but I would be very surprised if Prize Picks had him at 69.5. In fact, yeah, they have him down at 68.5 strokes, which is what I was expecting to see. So that's why 69.5 was catching my eye so much. And yeah, that would have been a heck of a value prop over here on Prize Picks if they had it. And based on the pricing that we have here, this looks like they have strokes higher than what they have on the sports books. Like, I believe Aberg was 68.5 over there. I believe guys like a Tom Kim were at 69.5. I know that guys like a Hovland, which I don't believe actually has a line on the board, he was at 69.5 strokes. So you can see Wyndham Clark, they have at 69.5. They have guys like Jason Day at that number too. I'll just tell you right off the bat that this feels volatile because Clark is a loose cannon off the tee, but that ball striking was what we were looking for out there for round two. So let me see if we have a comparison line for him. Looks like we do. He's actually juiced a little bit towards the over, which I guess makes sense now that you think about, his inaccuracy off the tee. But let me see. Do we have a birdie line for Wyndham? A 4.5 birdie line might be able to look at that. So this is what I was looking for here. A 4.5 birdie line on Wyndham Clark is exactly what we want. He's the number 3 birdie maker on the PGA Tour. And though he's a loose cannon, he's starting from far back, that's okay with a birdie line, right? He can make all the bogeys he wants. He can make a double, triple bogey for all we want. What we want is him to put the pedal to the gas, right? We want him to go out there full throttle, go after every single pin. And now that he's starting far back, I think that's exactly what we're going to get. So I love that prop for Wyndham Clark. In fact, that is probably going to be something that I play. So let's see what else we can work with. So in general, I do think that these birdie lines are probably some of the better spots to mix in. I did end up playing a Shane Lowry over 4.5 birdies today, which did not work out. But I don't think he's the worst lean. Like, he's a top 40 birdie maker on the PGA Tour. I know he hasn't had his best stuff, but the kind of player that I could see turning it around. So Okay, definitely think that we can play this Wyndham one, but let's try and find something to pair it with over here on strokes. A 69.5 line is asking someone to shoot -2, which is something that about half the field is likely to do. So if we can find somebody that's an average player, maybe just slightly better than the average, that might be a look over here for a 69.5. So answer kind of stands out from a first glance here. Not a lot of the 69s that I really like maybe a Thomas Dietrich, but he just had a ceiling around, so I could see him having a little bit of a stinker. Moving through this a little bit further, yeah, like the 68.5s, I guess could be in play as well, but I don't know who I'd take as my favorite option. Like a Fleetwood would certainly be in play at 68.5. I guess we could throw him into the mix. And Neiman, even like I think Neiman's gonna have a good day. If you can't tell, right? When the 69.5 line was mentioned in chat, my ears perked up. So yeah, if you can get that line 100%, but I might even consider taking an under at 68.5, if that tells you how much I would like him at 69.5. So let's see what else we have. So those props, I guess we could mix in. I guess I'll look at the birdie better matchups. It's not my favorite category, but at least worth checking. Down towards the bottom, I'm looking for any scrubs that we can try to exploit. So CT, oh my God. All right, we found the slip. It's this. It's 100% this. Not even close. How do they have CT Pan matched up against Tom Kim? Tom Kim, by the way, top 50 birdie maker on the PGA Tour, normally top 30 on the PGA Tour in the category, matched up against CT Pan, who I know he's played well in the Olympics. He's played well so far this week. He's a slapdick. He's hardly even a PGA Tour player. He's probably not making the FedEx Cup playoffs over here in 2024. He's certainly not making it to East Lake over there this year. So comparing him to Tom Kim, who's a legit stud, at the very least, guy that's making it to East Lake here in 2024 is, I think, an egregious take. So yeah, this Clark over and the CT Pan under is, I think, a pretty good combination. Let's see what we can do on Underdog. I'm still hoping that we can get a board posted over here. If not, they must have taken a big hit over here on moving day, because how don't they have anything posted yet? That's pretty wild. One thing I'll say, guys, right, is for all of my exposure over here for Saturday, make sure to check out the Patreon page. Just as the spreadsheets that you see throughout my content are posted over there for my Patreons, all of the slips that I enter are posted there as well. So on there, you'll get all of my exposure, the units that I'm putting down on stuff, as well as all the details for why I'm taking any given prop. I think the hidden value, or something that maybe people don't think about before they join my Patreon page, is not only getting access to player polls, all that kind of stuff, but also the insight into why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? For Showdown, I'm always talking about the sort of tee times that I'm looking for. I'm always talking about whether there's a weather edge over there, right? This sort of game theory to use for any slate. And then for props in particular, I teach you guys how to find your own props, right? I'm talking about what I'm looking for in players, right? Why a certain prop makes sense compared to others. And after a few months of being in my Discord, I don't want to say that you can go out there and just completely do it yourself, but you're going to have a much better understanding of golf betting than you did before. I can guarantee you that, right? I'm not going to guarantee wins. I will never do that. I will never say that sort of thing, because it's gambling at the end of the day. But what I can guarantee you is that you're going to have a better idea of how to attack your prop exposure. Now, the profit would be nice. We've had a really good go of it over the last 3 years now. It's been a pretty steady stream, I'll say, out there in the green. However, the bigger value, in my opinion, especially on the Patreon page, is having that insight. Because, I mean, you guys see some slips, I'll give just a few comments on. Some slips are full-on paragraphs and paragraphs on why I'm taking any given prop. So make sure to check it out if you guys haven't already. And we'll check out pick 6, and maybe they'll have an Underdog board posted, but we'll have to see. Davis, the lines maker over there for Underdog, is an absolute bitch ass. So not a surprise, in my opinion, that he hasn't posted a board. He's probably doing it out of spite because he hates me. And who could blame him, right? I've almost cost him his job multiple times. And like I said, he's a clown. He just waits for Prize Picks to post. He did this yesterday, by the way. He waited for Prize Picks to post. It's why I called him out over there in the live stream, and then copy and pasted every single line. In the way that you know that they're doing this, by the way, is that they only had the same players posted. The same exact players for strokes and birdies were posted on both sites. It is statistically impossible, by the way, for them to do that by accident. It is statistically impossible to do. There's 60 players, right? So, and I think there was like 15 guys posted. 15 choose 60, right? Do the math on that, right? That there was zero chance that was done by accident. So that's why I call them out, and they frankly deserve all the smoke at this point. And even under 68.5 is what you were saying. Dang, yeah, 69.5, man, I would have been nuking. 68.5, I would lean on the under. I think that he's played very sustainable golf to this stage and is just a stud. You're late, but what are my thoughts on Tommy Ladd? I thought his strokes line at 68.5 at plus 115. Yeah, if you're getting plus 115, I'm totally cool with that kind of under. He's played very consistent golf. I don't really know the best way to say it other than all 4 stat categories have been solid, but nothing has been extraordinary. He doesn't like have gains of 2 strokes in any one category, but he's into the green in all 4 stat categories, which counts for something, right? It said very consistent, very sustainable kind of golf. So yeah, honestly, at 68.5, I think with the easier setup that is likely, if I'm getting plus money on a player like Tommy, Bear, I don't want to say Hovland. Hovland, you'd want a little bit more juice, right? You probably want like plus 135, plus 140 on an under at 68.5. But yeah, Hovland, by the way, might even have a 69.5 line on books. I would hammer that even with some juice towards the under. All right, let's look at this Olympic golf stuff over here on pick 6, which at this point, just like yesterday, they only have stuff posted over here for fantasy points and pars. And I don't know why they choose to do this, right? I think last night they did end up posting some stuff late, but it was after I had already gone to bed. So what I would say for this site, especially if you're somebody that's trying to play it, is you can tail the stuff that I play on Prize Picks and Underdog and play it over there, right? If I like it on Prize Picks Underdog, I'm going to like it on Pick 6. Payouts are going to be a little bit different, but they don't give you a ding for correlation. So, if I enter a bunch of fades, I enter a bunch of positive stance plays, maybe I will anti-correlate them on Prize Picks Underdog to get a slightly better payout. What you should do on Pick 6, if you're a player over there, is take those props and then correlate them, right? So you don't have to have an over and an under in the same slip. Right? If I have like 6, 7 slips in, like I sometimes do out there for certain slates, just take all the overs on strokes together, right? Or all the unders on strokes, because you can correlate over there without penalty. So that's how I would handle Pick 6. If they decide to post a board, great. Again, yesterday they decided to do so super late. So kind of unfortunate, but that's what they're giving us right now. Nothing we can do about it. Let me refresh Underdog and see if we finally have a board. And if so, we can talk about it. If not, we unfortunately have to hop on out of here. And unfortunately, they haven't posted, which kind of stinks, but it is what it is. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for this live stream for round 3. Hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared for all of your action. Best of luck out there, whether you're entering some GPPs, some single entries, or some prop slips, and go out there and make your boy proud. Round 2, looks like there were a lot of winners out there, so hopefully we can continue that momentum into the weekend. Best of luck, like I mentioned. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't, so you don't miss any of the content to come. That will include a round 4 showdown stream, which will be at a similar time tomorrow afternoon, as well as all the content for the FedEx Cup playoffs. That'll be the Wyndham Championship, right, last event of the regular schedule. After that, FedEx St. Jude BMW Championship, and a very good chance that I will be at Eastlake this year. I love going to Eastlake. I've been there. It's the Super Bowl of our golf season the last 4 years. Big reason this year I want to go is that they changed the golf course completely. They dug it up, completely redid it. New bunkers, completely new greens at Eastlake, and I want to get an eye on it, right? It's our Super Bowl. It's probably the most important event of the year, so I think that people should know about the changes. So I'm going to try and get up there to Eastlake and whatnot, but yeah, a lot to come. So subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of that, and like I said, best of luck, and let's get after it.